in the days of like AI and so much toolkit. But one thing though, I thought about is how important for us to really understand human.
I actually think humanity is entering a phase where we're redefining what it is that we are supposed to do. That making the things we make today will seem anachronistic.
I think the growth of these tools has made it more accessible for a broader set of the design community to actually participate in prototyping. And I think that is a nice thing to see, and the AI stuff may accelerate that as well.
Welcome everyone. Hope everyone have some good food and good drinks. How's config, everyone?
Good?
Good?
Yeah, it's amazing.
And anything amazing you want to share?
Figma Make.
Figma Make?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. So tonight we're going to share a little bit about design with all the tools kind of in the AI age. First, I want to give a quick introduction for our panel.
I'm Glenn Lipka. I'm VP of Product Design for CrowdStrike. Been a Figma user since I think was one of the first 100 Figma users, and I've just loved it ever since. But all for B2B product design reasons, not for other kinds. And I've mostly been at startups before CrowdStrike.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jung Kim. I'm a UX director at Google, a team called Google Labs. It's a really tiny, small AI startup inside of Google. So we built just like a bunch of 0 to 1 products.
My name is Akshat. I'm a principal design technologist here at Punchcut. Welcome everyone to our office. I lead a lot of emerging technologies and AI prototyping efforts. And yeah, we're really excited to see some of the announcements come out today. Excited about the future of design and prototyping and the conversation. Looking forward to hearing from everyone.
I'm Nicholas. I actually was very recently at Figma, so very excited to see all the stuff that I knew was coming. There was a whole bunch of design things that I was doing this morning. I was like, I should wait until this stuff gets announced, because I feel like I'm going to need grid view, like in particular. Yeah, so I've worked in the mixture of design and engineering, Google and Figma and a few other spots.
Awesome. The first question I want to ask is, during this year's config, I don't know if you guys participated or kind of like watch online, is there anything surprise you or you feel like challenge your assumptions? Anything you want to share out?
I think that there were a number of announcements that we kind of expected in terms of seeing more AI in the process, more AI sort of embedded across the various Figma products that we're seeing. I think the thing that was maybe surprising was, I think we're seeing a lot of consolidation in the industry right now around a particular kind of prototyping tool, which is this whole approach to prompt to prototype, prompt to production. Right? It's the chat bar and then one panel, and it's the working sort of website or app on the other. It's interesting to see Figma's take on that, and it's both very promising and leaves a lot of questions, I think, open for the future about how does Figma uniquely become the tool that brings the sort of rich design context of how do teams work, how do we go beyond the sort of generic sort of chat-based interface of a back and forth in open text fields and take it to the next level. So we're really curious to see where sort of that space is headed. And again, seeing a lot of AI embedded in some good ways, some so-so, and we're excited for the future kind of ways.
But thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Go ahead. No, I think it's particularly interesting to see, like, if you look at the way engineers have approached like AI, where like it is. Cursor's a great example of this, where there is a set of canvases or files or things that are being manipulated with the conversation that's happening, but also really good versions of like autocomplete, things that are happening in the code itself without a chat that's driving it.
Yeah.
And I think that you're starting to see some of those things emerge in the design tools, but we don't really know what that shape is yet. Like the things where it won't require you to ask, but it will actually do the thing that was intended from the beginning. I thought the example that Giorgio showed, where I was like filling out a calendar with all the numbers and the dates. It's like, that is a very trivial thing, but it feels like it saves time, and it feels like it works in somebody's like existing workflow, and I hope to see more of those things. And you're just getting like hints of it at this point.
I hate to be a downer, but I was super disappointed with all the announcements today. It's like sometimes I feel like I'm living in a different world. I live in the B2B enterprise application world. There are no one on my team. There's 80 designers. There's not a single one that works on mobile. There's not a single one that makes a website. There's not a single one that makes a brochure. Like that's not what we're doing. We're making complicated, dense applications with buttons everywhere, and you're doing complex things. And none of their announcements helped me with any of that. Like I mentor a lot of people with you, Peter, on ADP lists, and I'm going to tell them, hey, maybe try Figma Sites instead of Framer for your portfolio, right? I already tell them like it's a good tool to make your resume in, but for enterprise business applications, there was nothing. I met with one of their PMs and I was telling him this, and I was like, I would pay money to take features away from individual contributors on my team. I have a whole team for the design system, a whole team who are saying, please use this button. And then comes a designer and they're like, I can make whatever button I want. Like I would pay money to say, no, just use the library. That's what the thing is. Our engineers, they don't want our code. They have their own code. They don't need us making code. And so I'm really disappointed. And when I met Dylan and he showed me Figma, I was like, this looks really cool, but are you going to be like a mobile website design tool, or are you going to help me with business applications? And he promised me that he's going to have business applications, but we still don't have a native way of making tables, menus, buttons, trees. Like make a tree that opens and closes in a prototype. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
And so I think that I feel like I'm in the minority from a person standpoint of who goes to the event, but I bet that if our dollars showed up instead of the human beings who showed up, they would listen to us more. So anyways, I don't mean to be a downer.
Preach!
We have seen some of the evolution in the tools from design to prototyping, right? So one thing I think is very interesting, even today, Figma is launching the code capability. More and more, the bridge is getting close. So how do you guys feel about the tools are emerging from each other? Do you think like in the future, design, prototyping, even front-end dev is gonna be closer?
Yes.
I think the obvious is like, yeah, definitely. But then like, it is in my word, like, it's never two very separate things. It's like one, prototyping is it's part of design process in a way. In the very beginning, if you want to see like broad stroke of like where we're going, often like prototyping is such a good sketching tool to say like, hey, like what does it feel like? What am I building? Like what's cool? And so we use it in my team. We also have like awesome creative technologists, and so we bring a lot of just like first sketches to often we use prompting as a prototyping tool because like sometimes that's what we build this AI product. So like just like big stroke, but then like also definitely still like the communication between designer and engineer, and like our engineering team would really love designing a lot of functional prototype, and there's like the value. So definitely a lot of merging in a way that there's like a bunch of tools. So our engineer can design, our PM is designing, like as a designer do code, and sometimes some of our designer actually commit the code to the production system, which is scary when we do that. So definitely a lot of like hybrid workflows happening. So that's a trend, and we'll definitely see more of those.
I feel like there's like an interesting spectrum of the lightest way prototyping, which is intended to go really broad and like explore things that may be more further afield from what like the core product is. Like they will probably benefit more from like AI-based generation of stuff, but they may be harder to imagine those things going into production, but liberate people from like the constraints of the system. But I also think that you can, like prototypers end up taking such an important role in working with front-end engineers for the final production of stuff too. So like both that exploratory side, but then trying to make sure that those like exploratory ideas, if they are the right ones, make it into the product in a way that's like high fidelity. And I love it when like architects are able to like influence raise the bar of the implementation by like sort of proving like, oh, this is the thing that is possible, and making it so that the final product reflects like the aspirations of the original. But I think I'm curious to see how the tooling both supports that like early phase as well as sort of helping with the later phase handoff, but more than handoff, more like actually getting people's hands dirty and like helping do those things.
And I think we see a lot of excitement, of course, around this idea of bringing design and engineering together in one space. I think for now, our excitement is more focused around the idea of, I think exactly as folks are mentioning, the idea of bringing design closer to prototyping, because prototyping is a lot closer to the design process itself. It's an artifact, it's a continuous sort of part of our process. It's a way we accomplish design outcomes, right? It's a way we support the design process, as opposed to the sort of full stack implementation at a production level of engineering code. While interesting, feels like it might be a little ways away. Mostly just even strictly from the perspective of our design tools are far from perfect right now. Our engineering tools are far from perfect right now. I don't think we've figured out each of those sides to successfully and cohesively bring them together. But it is certainly possible, I think, to start seeing the design process get a lot more sort of the benefits of the engineering mindset and the engineering ways of working. So we're excited about that aspect. The full stack sort of everything happening in one place, maybe some time to go for that.
There was a breakout room where Dylan Field, CEO of Figma, was interviewing the CEO of Y Combinator, and the guy had a fascinating statistic. He said 25% of the latest class of Y Combinator is 90% AI generated code, which I really had trouble wrapping my head around that, of like, how, is the thing really simple? Like, I mean, Y Combinator, their class of thing. I mean, they do have serious products that they work on. And if I just suspend disbelief and say, like, somehow, that, and these are still early days, it's only going to get better. And then the question is, well, who's telling the AI what they want? And how good is the code, and what gotchas have we not really thought about? Yep. But this is it's a very exciting moment in technology where you could have fewer people do a lot more. Right. And that it opens up the door for a designer to make something a lot more complicated. In the same way that maybe in 2006, 2007, jQuery exploded because it allowed people with very simple technical capabilities to make really cool things for the time. Like, I'm not a programmer, but I can do jQuery. And like now you can say, well, I'm not a programmer, but I can use this AI tool and make things work. And it's just that next generation, and there could be an explosion of interesting, dynamic, new kinds of designs and new kinds of products because of it.
Very interesting perspective, kind of like seeing all the roles is kind of like merging, especially was in that session too, talking about how a lot of the AI generated code, the designer can run tests against it much faster in a much faster speed. Do you guys have seen a shift in the prototyping methods and how that impact the workflow in design teams? What do you see in the future as well? How do you predict it will shifting?
It may shift a lot, but I haven't seen much in the last 3 years from previous to that. What about you guys?
There's been a bit more empowering a broader set of designers to do prototyping. Prototyping can take so many forms. Like, I feel like there's aspects of motion design or like even like paper prototyping, like they're all viable ways to convey an idea. Yeah. And I think the growth of these tools has made it more accessible for a broader set of the design community to actually participate in prototyping. And I think that is a nice thing to see. And the AI stuff may accelerate that as well. Yeah. But it's all just like making it feel approachable and possible to express an idea in some form that can be shared with somebody else.
For me, it's not so much about like how the design process shifting, but overall product development process is shifting, especially for like it's like very much AI product. Then like because it's so hard to control what this intelligent super baby would do, and so like it's like black box, and so it's very unpredictable. And so previously we as a designer we were control everything. It's like, I want this beautiful system like craft control, but that we had to step back a little bit. That it's like different way of thinking about design and like all together. How do we make a product? So that shift a little bit, and then how to design adjust the new way of approaching product and like product market fit and all that. But I think core design essence is like kind of same. It's still like way of thinking. How do we read them as a human being? And for us it's like AI. Then like suppose AI is supposed to speak human language, but it can pretend really good at human, but not really. And so how do we really solve it? So but that's like continuum of like designer as like understanding human, understanding problem, and like business. So I don't see a lot of difference, a lot of shift in terms of like how we approach design. And prototyping is such a beautiful tool. And one example is kind of like they call saying like all the detail that we had my team experienced like 3 days ago. We've been having this design of like flipping card, and we set up, oh cool, the like card flipping. And when we were so impressed a lot of at Google we use we try to use things like cursor a lot, like a lot of like with the vibe coding for something like that. And then it's like we're like, yeah, it's kind of like too much. And so it still like help us to make a lot of like those like micro interaction decision, which was interesting. And so it saved us time. It's like definitely cost reduction is a value we see from those two, but didn't we think of it like how, it's like very different in terms of how we approach design as a designer.
Being able to try like 10 times as many ideas at the same amount of time is really valuable. Mm-hmm. But I also feel like the AI stuff, like trying to prompt it into polishing a design is just brutal and like unfulfilling. But it's like I think you more turn it to that like the early phase breath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
versus getting frustrated by the inability to control the depth, where it's like you actually just pick the tools yourself.
Yeah.
We've seen a shift both in the necessity of prototyping as it's perceived, right, and the ways in which we prototype. I think prototypes have become a lot more table stakes. They're kind of expected at this point, as opposed to being this thing that only a few very specialized professionals could have built, let's say 5 or 10 years ago. I think tools like Figma, tools like ProtoPie, tools like now Lovable, V0, a lot of these vibe coding tools are bringing the ability to make interactive flows into the hands of a lot more people than previously possible. And we've also seen that sort of paired with a shift in the nature of design work we are doing becoming a lot more dynamic, a lot more sort of non-deterministic, a lot harder to express through static flows. And with that, the way we prototype, how much we prototype, and why we prototype has all started to shift really significantly, and we expect to see that happen a lot more as we see more and more focus on building AI into our products.
One of the shifting I've noticing is like more and more fidelity has been increased in prototyping because of the tools are just like more advanced, and you can link up with it's very similar to actually a demo coding, right? Like so it's actually give the designer capability to make a little bit more early decision to observe how their design can apply to the real data, to the details, right? And also, like I think on top of that, last year when I was seeing config, they're launching the AI and quickly they withdraw that. One of the obvious noise has been generated was like it looked very similar to other design. And I think like we have been facing that, and more aesthetic has been similar. So how do you guys feel like under the age of AI, there are so many replicate of the same design, how design is heading towards?
What's the thing called where the AI gets trained on other AI stuff and it's like a degradation catastrophe? Like there's a word of where it starts to break down because it's being fed only AI input. And I worry that humans do the exact same thing. That like, somebody does something innovative and cool, and then everyone says, oh, just take that and put it in my product.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, ChatGPT was cool, and now there's like 50 ChatGPTs. And what is the prompt in Figma? It's just ChatGPT there with some APIs and you just hear it constantly, like, oh, there was a company that I know just changed their name from whatever it was .com to whatever it is
AI.
what the hell is that? Why do that? Like, what's the point? And I feel like innovation is really important, and that's why I like design in the first place. And I think if we know that AI is not going to innovate, then we have to. And I feel like everyone's just punching in the exact same ideas into their own product at this point.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful to look at how, like, when engineers are using AI to both pull existing implementations of things in, it's like a very helpful form of like, I need this boilerplate, I need this thing to work the way that you expect. I think similar opportunities for design to be able to fetch like stuff from design systems. So like there's some aspect of being able to access a body of common patterns or like standard things that's really useful, versus counting on it to actually generate something that's net new, like figuring out some brand new interaction that it's basically not possible to. It may make something that inspires a human to be like, oh yeah, that is a possible thing we can try. But I'm thinking through little things like the button that Path had, where we flare out into like a number of other little buttons. It was a lovely mobile pattern, but it was like a completely new thing at that time, and I wouldn't expect an AI to create that. Although a human may stumble upon it and seeing it and then turn it into something. But I think turning this more towards like help with both accessing common patterns, knowing the right way to do things, working with design systems is a really good place, and it mirrors what you see code doing well. And it benefits from being consistent, being those like standards. But then it hopefully leaves place for people to actually do more exploratory stuff on aesthetics or other things.
I definitely do that. I did some website design / making using Cursor, and then like it was so smart, such a good print. Like, you know, the kind of problem I know does exist, but like I was so lazy to like didn't resolve that. Like, yeah, like so smartly pointed out. Oh, I recommend you to move that button to here because blah blah. I was like, shit, you're right. And so it's like well trained by best practice. So you know what's like good, well defined design. So it's like I think really good crits and. I don't know, my companion, like I can ask, but then like it won't be the creative task will be a little bit like behind. It's not like, you know, it doesn't have a desire to, oh, I want to come up like create a new thing. So my thought I was originally thinking about is like, what's your role for designer to become a little more like artist? So like having like my like very expressive, like be much more opinionated versus like kind of mass appeal, find a solution. So. And of course, it's like range of aspect of those. So I don't know. It might be in the future we may want to see a little more like human role, much more having this opinion, be very creative, find like we have a curiosity and we have like just desire to do something different just because it's different. We want to see something new. So that excitement should be, I don't know, maybe it's like design.
I feel like you know when to break the rules.
Yeah.
And like an AI will sometimes
Have the
accidentally
taste.
break the rules, and it's
Yeah.
not like there's no intention to it. But
Yeah.
I think knowing what the rules are and then being able to make a deliberate choice to do something different, possibly to discover something new.
Yeah.
Building on that, I think the points that have been brought up about standardization around patterns are both really, really valuable and also the biggest limitation that AI brings, right? It is essentially inherently limited to what it has seen before and that it can develop. Of course, the models are getting smarter. There's reasoning models that can maybe start to push beyond. But we see to your question about how does design react to that, I think the sense of working with patterns that exist and then exactly knowing when to break out of them bringing that element of distinction and differentiation is going to be super key. And that's where the sense of aesthetic, sense of taste, sense of discretion, judgment, all of those things that are inherently and innately human come to the forefront. And design should be leading a lot of that, not AI, of course.
And I think I was chatting with Glenn during the conflict between sessions. One thing we were chatting about is the AI don't ask you questions, right? It only throw up an answer or suggestion for you. Maybe in someday AI is trained to be curious about stuff and start challenging your question as well, and kind of ask you more definition, right?
Yeah, I have a part of my team is the analytics team.
Yeah.
And they were really used to acting like ChatGPT, which is somebody would say, hey, how many people clicked on this button? And they would say 296. They would just give a number. But I'm trying to train them to say, don't do that. Ask, what are you trying to find out? What would that answer tell you? What if it was high? What if it was low? What decisions would you make differently? If you understand what the person's actually trying to do, then every single time they're like, oh, you don't want that number. What you want is this other thing. And let me show you how that other thing can be visualized. And I'm trying to teach them to be strategic and not just a automaton that answers questions blindly without thinking of why you would want to know. And I feel like that's exactly what AI is doing. They're just blindly answering. They're even giving you text that looks like an answer, even if it's not an answer. They're very confident about that answer, even if they're not, even if they're totally lying or hallucinating. And I wish that the first thing that would respond is, do you mind if I ask you some questions? And help me to understand what I'm even asking for. That would be a great companion.
I think we're starting to see now that there's some interesting aspects there where we expect AI to be able to start to do some of that, right? If you look at the latest updates in Gemini's research mode, for example, it first creates a research plan, gets you to verify that the research plan is correct, and then acts on that, which is great and exciting. I think when you work with deep research and ChatGPT, it also will try to first ask questions. But it seems like some of this feedback at a very surface level has kind of started to get implemented. But where we see tools that incorporate AI, it's so majorly lacking, is especially with things like Figma Make, for example. Right? Part of the disappointment there, I think, is that it is so eager to go from the one prompt that you gave it to this magical, beautiful solution that, yeah, I've solved your problem. Here's a website, it works, the buttons are working. That's where we really want to see really intentional, thoughtful, considerate interfaces that help us work with the AI to give it the context that it needs and to help it understand what it doesn't understand, in addition to what it knows about patterns and such.
A very interesting topic everyone is chatting about is okay, there's AI is very powerful today, right? It can do a lot of inspiring images, even do layout. How do you guys see the AI? Is it going to impact designer role? Do you think the designer role is going to shift or have less role in the company?
I had some chit-chat. I think it's an interesting question, often with my PM and engineering questions, oh, you don't need PM anymore. ChatGPT can write up PRD and say, yeah, you don't need designer. Oh, you don't need engineer. Then who's gonna do the work? every function has the question. What does that mean? I think one thing is definitely designer toolkit is so wide now, with coding, with prototyping, and so we can basically end to end. We can actually be the product as a designer. I don't need to be the designer. We have some designer became GM kind of role at the company, so it's interesting and exciting time. At the same time, my engineer can design, and so we don't necessarily need to be limited by what law they find. I'm part of such a big company, so I guess it context is a little different
Yeah.
because of like engineering culture and whatnot. But I don't know. It's like I just expect a lot of like designer, founder, like so it's really fluid. But just again, like fundamentally, what designers do doesn't really change because what we are missing is whenever I don't know if you ever had like project with like non-designer, everyone is just like someone just like talking. No, I'm only doer or maker. Then like that like aspect of like get our hands dirty and making things and try to see it and that spirit is so powerful. And like designer has a lot of superpower. We can make a good story. We can visualize. We can tell a story. And so that's become awesome. And what do you do with it? It's like it's just really up to you in the days of like AI and so much toolkit. But one thing though, I thought about is how important for us to really understand human now, just like back to just like basic that when we make a lot of products, some of our like our AI model capability is like amazing and so we have like this really powerful video generation tool. But then when I tell it this, oh, 2 person having fun and drinking coffee, and then like it just keep making this like coffee and talking at the same time. No. What I meant is this person is holding a cup, cup of coffee and then drink and then talk. It's like so like they don't understand what I mean. And so we do a lot of like prompting ourselves because as a designer we understand we are our job is to, oh, when someone say this is what they mean most of cases and so. A lot of like, I don't know what it calls like almost a communication coach, but fundamentally just like really understand human, and so that aspect of designer become I just see more important in this interesting era.
I'd say there's the kinds of tasks that we're expecting AI to start to sort of replace design roles or activities that designers do, and are the kinds that I think if you ask most of this room or most designers, I think mostly everyone will agree that we haven't been particularly excited to push pixels around, right? We haven't been particularly excited to do the tedious sort of busy work that takes up so much more of our time than we wanted it to. There's tasks on our plate that involve us adding a lot more value. That we would certainly benefit from that being taken away, so we can focus on the things that are more uniquely and distinctively sort of provided by a human designer in a very human way, right? Exactly as Jung was saying, I think the ability to form consensus, the ability to hold conversations and understand broader context, understand what is the way that this particular decision relates based on that other team's thinking. Where is the general space headed? Those are things that we see sort of a more empowered designer with a broader skill set, a more generalized skill set, thanks to AI, to be able to focus on those more very human things that designers have always added the most value in. So we see that as starting to get up-leveled and become easier to access across the board.
I'm going to take it like a slightly longer term, like let's say 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Even currently, if somebody on TikTok makes a cool shirt, there's technology today to have that in Forever 21 within months. Just like seeing it, replicating it, having the design automatically made, turning it into the equipment, the prefab, the automation, shipping it to every mall in America and beyond. And that's only going to go faster. Business things like at CrowdStrike, the attacker, the adversaries, they're becoming more and more digital. Like there's not even a human being. It's a deep fake, or it's an automatic email or an automatic SMS with an AI chatbot that's trying to take somebody's money, and the protection is becoming more and more automatic too. And I think that we already saw with COVID, people can live in a lot of different sorts of places. And with all this automation and capabilities, I actually think humanity is entering a phase where we're redefining what it is that we are supposed to do. That making the things we make today will seem anachronistic. Like, why would you need to make a UI of a form when there isn't a person anymore to fill out the form? It's a computer filling out the form, right? And so I actually think a dramatic amount of things may change, and the thought of a designer may become more artistic, like making a cool shirt on TikTok might be what a designer does, and maybe there is a way to monetize the shirts that get sold through Forever 21 through that. I'm sure like there's going to be a lot of arguments about how money exchanges hands. I think that things like universal basic income will become more popular when there are fewer things for us to do, but we still want stuff. I think in the short run, there's all these intricate questions around, like, oh, I want to make a picture and it's not showing me the right picture. I tried to get the tool to make 2 islands next to each other, one big, one small, and it refused to give me less than 3 islands. It was either 1 island or 3 islands. There was no 2 islands. And so yeah, now it's a little bit weird, but it's going to get better. There is no technology. Like when I was a kid, I had the first personal computer, and then I had an Apple II, and then I had the Commodore 64 and a Macintosh, and things just get better. They always get better, right? There is no going backwards. And so I think that we have a huge reckoning as a species about what it is that designers are supposed to do with their day, and how we enjoy ourselves, how we get the things that we want, and how society keeps going. Right.
Okay.
Just want to deaden the room as much as possible. Heading for collapse. Have a good night.